This is Continuum Drag, a podcast where we watch sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between. This week, Alien Nation, episode 21.
Hey, George. Congratulations on Detective 2.
Thank you, Matt. I guess I had no reason to be nervous.
George, I just heard. Isn't it wonderful? He's only been on the Earth for 6 years, and already he's Detective 2. Could be captain someday. He could be mayor.
Albert.
Detective 2. I'm gonna go tell everybody.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast ending on a cliffhanger. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
You've been doppelganger all night.
Oh, I love that. I did love that slang.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that.
Jordan, before we get into it, of course, I just wanted to take the time to acknowledge, I know this is an important time in your family's household. You're getting ready to celebrate. So I just wanted to wish you and your family a very happy Tony Piccolo's birthday.
Hold on now. Who's Tony Piccolo again? Is that the guy from Sequest?
Yeah, and don't you recall in that episode of Sequest, they discussed how his birthday is on October 28th, which is in just over a week from now. So I know you're getting ready for Tony Piccolo's birthday.
I didn't like Tony Piccolo. Let the record stand. I did not like him.
Well, it's his birthday soon. I hope you got him something.
No. And if it was Roy Scheider, yeah, I'll celebrate his birthday.
It's so rare for people on TV to state their exact birth date. I was very pleased when they did on that show.
Yeah, that's true. That's interesting.
Yeah. So everyone get ready. It's almost October 28th. Have your Tony Piccolo cakes ready.
But that's not what they called. They called to hear the finale, the show we've gone, a third of the way through and then bailed, and now we're watching the finale. And let me just say, some things have changed.
They sure have. But before we get into it, Jordan, let's quickly talk about the end of this show, obviously. Canceled unceremoniously. And it was interesting because apparently ratings were good. It was a show that Fox liked, and they would continue. They did 5 further TV movies later of the show.
Yeah.
3 or 4 years later. But it was canceled because in 1990-1991 season of Fox, the network, they were their new network, ad revenues were not very good at that point. They canceled all of their dramas for that season. So no dramas went to air, and that's why Alien Nation was canceled, not because it wasn't doing well, but because they couldn't afford to do the show any longer.
Well, it's funny. I actually remember, not this specific instance, but I remember for a good chunk, it seemed like in the 90s, that was like Fox's thing. Like they would be a channel that I will give them the credit, seemed to be the one, but they were the 4th channel at the time, right? So it's not like today. They were the one that seemed to go out on a limb and create like interesting shows you wouldn't expect on TV, but then also, like you're saying, just unceremoniously just cancel things. Like it's like, oh, you like this weird show that we created? Now it's off the air. It was very like, it seemed really hit or miss with them.
Well, it's interesting to find out that it was mostly just because they couldn't get the ad revenue. I'm like, wow, what a crazy time to be like a new TV network that's like, oh, we can't afford these shows we started.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
But that is what has brought us to the end here, I guess, and why it only lasted 1 season. And of course, Jordan, because we've only watched 6 episodes before triggering the escape pod, we missed 15 episodes of this season.
Wow.
So I've written down a few titles of some of the choice episodes, and I'm going to give them to you, and you can try to tell me what you think that episode would have been about had we watched it.
Sure.
So the first episode, Jordan, it's titled The First Cigar.
The First Cigar. This is actually an episode where it's a sort of a father-son episode that George catches his son Buck smoking, and in an effort to show him how bad smoking is, he smokes, but what he realizes, he doesn't know his own alien physiology and tobacco have such a strong effect on one another, much stronger than in humans, so he's addicted instantly. And so now that first cigarette becomes 10 cigarettes, becomes cigars, and he can't stop. And now Matt has to try to get George off of smoking. And it all started just with a lesson. He was trying to teach Buck a lesson.
That's pretty good, actually. It was actually about George and the IRS.
That sounds terrible.
All right, Jordan, next episode.
Yeah.
Chains of Love.
Another interesting one. This is actually the first episode where you really get something between Matt and Kathy, and they start like it's a little bit like will they, won't they? They're getting in love, and then what ends up happening out is that Kathy gets freaked out because Matt's into bondage.
It's not bad.
It's also I should mention written by Gene Roddenberry.
Okay. Well, that makes sense then. No, what it's actually about is they are tracking a possible tanctonese black widow who's killing men she dates, and Susan is maybe cheating on George.
What didn't think that lesson was going to happen, but I think that was an episode of the X-Files.
Oh, probably. I mean, that's a classic.
Yeah.
I remember when Scully was cheating on Mulder.
It's going to be something really boring because poor Kathy, not Kathy, what's his wife's name?
Susan.
She never got anything to do in this show. I really felt bad for her. She had all the makings of an interesting character.
I assume that episode she was cheating on George, and that's why they have a baby now.
Oh, spoiler for this episode.
All right, Jordan, next episode title, The Spirit of 95.
Ooh, this is weirdly, it's actually their Christmas episode. And what they do is they do a play on like Scrooge, the Scrooge story. What do you call it? A Christmas Carol. And George goes through to learn. He actually learns the meaning of Christmas because he obviously doesn't know, being an alien.
He hasn't met our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ yet.
Yeah, that's right. He doesn't understand. So Matt sets him straight.
Well, Jordan, it's actually about the tanctonese suffrage movement.
Ooh, that doesn't sound fun at all.
Next episode title, Jordan?
Yeah.
Real Men.
This is an episode where Matt takes George out camping because he realizes he doesn't think he's like tough enough. He's not a guy's guy enough. He's like, well, I'm going to show you what it's like. And he takes him out camping with this expectation of they're going to go hunting and fishing and doing all these things. But then things don't go right. And what ends up happening is George is just inherently better at everything. And then he's a little bit jealous and things don't go the way he wanted. That's the episode. It's kind of a funny episode.
It's pretty good. What it's actually about, Jordan, is they try to bust a steroid ring that's happening at gyms while George is pregnant.
I like that the last sentence always just throws everything from the first off. You're like, sorry, what was the last part?
George is pregnant in that episode.
He probably had the baby.
It's absolutely the case. And the final one I'm going to give you, Jordan, the episode is titled Gimme Gimme.
This story is actually my life with dealing with my coworker. Just kidding. That's terrible. That's just a joke for me, everyone. And it's a gambling episode, and they have to break a gambling ring. But what ends up happening is they're short people to go do this like sting. So George brings in the help of Susan, and Susan goes in, and much like the cigarette episode, she gets addicted to gambling.
Oh, you're not too far off, yeah. Jordan. The episode is about Matt sells a lottery ticket to Albert Einstein, and Albert wins the lottery.
Oh, okay, sure. Could do worse.
All right, Jordan, you ready to get into it? Should we cover this final episode?
Yeah, this is a wild episode. At all times you think, oh, it's a normal, boring Alien Nation episode, and then they throw a scene in, and you go, sorry, what was that?
Here's the IMDb summary for episode 21, Green Eyes. Tensions between partners erupt when Francisco passes the Detective 2 exam and is promoted over Sykes. Matt becomes uncomfortable with his attraction to Kathy. The mysterious deaths of a newcomer judge points to a lethal bacterium being used as a weapon. And that was courtesy of Tygan.
Well, Tygan, let me start with something. Luke, this is a question for you. The whole subplot of this, as you just mentioned, is Matt and Kathy, sort of a will they, won't they. Mm-hmm. And they've sort of hinted at this from the beginning. And you're like, oh, these are two characters you like, and they seem like they would be good together. And they sort of try in this episode. They kind of go for dates, and they kind of admit their mutual attraction for each other. And the whole thing sort of rests on the difficulties they have because of their differences. And Luke, maybe you don't agree, but I think they're doing some sort of thing. I think it's like a race relations thing. We come from two different worlds. I don't know if I liked how this was handled. Like, I think there was an interesting comment they could have there, but I don't know if they knew what comment they were trying to make, other than maybe we don't want these characters together.
It was tough. I think they're going to get to this episode eventually, and I think maybe they probably toyed with it through the episodes we missed. But yeah, it was very much like we see them kiss at the start because they're like kind of getting romantic. And I was like, are they dating? No, they're just toying with the idea. But then Sykes, as a guy who's kind of freaked out by Tanctonese, still has some prejudices against them. He's sort of upset that he likes her. Like, he's upset with himself. And like there's a new officer at the station who she advises him to go on a date with a human then and see how he feels about that. And so he does. He takes out a woman who apparently Kathy knows because they bump into each other later and they're like, oh, hey, friend. I'm like, oh, you too weird to date her friend, Sykes, but okay.
Yeah.
And that causes jealousy, so they go on another date, and like she tries to meet Matt in the middle by like covering her bald head and making him human food, which she tries to eat and she pukes, and the human food. I think she tries to make lasagna with marshmallows. I don't know. The whole thing's played for laughs, obviously.
It was played for laughs, but I actually, just to interrupt you, I think could have been a little bit more of a sweeter scene, because I think the idea is quite, again, sweet. She likes him, he likes her, she recognizes the difference, but she's gonna go, I'm gonna go this extra way and make myself uncomfortable and possibly sick, which is what she does, because she cares about him so much. That's so genuine and so lovely. But they play it for laughs, which I thought, that kind of undercuts what I think was a lovely, dare I say, human, genuine moment of like, there was something there. That's a lovely scene. Like, oh, let's make it about marshmallows. It's like, I don't think you need to.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think the problem here is there is a real social conflict, a real character conflict they could have here. It never really gels. They play it more for laughs sometimes than they should. And it just, yeah, you're right. I think the problem is it just never quite clicks into place. And like it like kind of culminates, and then Sykes bumps into her and she's going out on a date with a tanctonip guy, much like he had done to her earlier in the episode. And she just kind of tells him, like, she kind of says, like, hey, this isn't going to work out. You don't like that I'm tanctonese. You want me not to be that way. So I think we shouldn't see each other. And it leaves, and then Sykes is left like heartbroken as it's pouring rain in a very like romance novel kind of soft lit shot, which was kind of fun.
Yeah. Oh, and I want to make one quick note. Apparently, Matt went on a date and they saw Back to the Future 5. I was like, oh, it's the future. I forgot. And also, in this future, Back to the Future kept making movies?
Yeah, I also made note of that they went on a date to Back to the Future 5.
Weird. But it's so funny because the Back to the Future trilogy, like, they clearly ended it. Like, there was no indication they were going to keep going. So it was a weird one to choose, you know? It wasn't like they said, oh, it's Rocky 7. And you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. He can't stop making them.
Hey, they just foresaw our future of remakes, legacy sequels, and prequels for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Jordan, now, obviously, we've covered a subplot here, but I want to go back to something really quick that we skipped past. Did you watch the opening credits to the final episode?
No, I didn't. I jumped over them.
Well, Jordan, if you had watched them, you would have known the neighbor girl, Lieutenant Dobbs, and the photographer have all been scrubbed from the credits.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned it in the last podcast. These people, except for the lieutenant, hadn't been seen in quite some time. So I think they were like the pilot. They're like, we have it set. And then episode 2 or 3, they're like, maybe we won't see these people so much. So yeah, I'm not surprised. I should have watched it.
I was trying to figure out when they got scrubbed, but I couldn't quite, looking at the like kind of episode summaries, I couldn't quite suss out when these people got scrubbed at. I also couldn't suss out if they ever got any episodes either, so it's hard to know.
Yeah. Anyways, I mean, we'll never know what Molly was up to.
Since we're covering subplots, why don't we really quickly go through the C plot, which Buck, the teenager, gets in this episode.
Okay. I was just talking about this yesterday with some people because this is what you do when you're out with people. I'm like, hey, I was watching Alien Nation. We don't need to talk about it. But let me tell you about this plot. That's how I let it. It's so weird in TV to set up a plot as one thing and then make an entire U-turn, but for no reason. And it just like undercuts everything you just did. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, well, it starts off, obviously we've seen Buck has changed since his days in the gangs. He now has become quite the good student. He loves English. Yeah. He loves human literature anyway. And he's obviously in English class, and his English teacher's like, hey, you guys, the school board has voted against us reading any books other than Nancy Reagan's My Turn.
Yeah, it was weird. There was like a kind of joke of like, I think the exhaustion of, 8 years of Reagan and 4 years of Bush. I think they're just like, it's like, having to listen to this sort of stuff. And it's like some sort of, joke of that time period. But it's interesting. They've adjusted Buck and that he's so good in school. And you're like, oh, this makes sense. This is what George was sort of saying. Like, the stereotype of if you apply yourself, you can see what you do. But he's applied himself. He's this great student. And clearly the teacher has taken him under his wing because at all times he's very intelligent, but he's also so new to everything. He's so innocent that he's just discovering these great works of literature, and he's so excited by them. Like they said, like he's reading them in their original languages, you know?
Yeah. And so the English teacher's like, hey, I'm going to set up an after-school book club because some of you are interested in reading. And Buck obviously wants to join. And there's some other classmate. There's like one other guy who's like, I'll also join the book club. And we see them like hanging out in a park, discussing the books they're reading. And, you know, as you said, Buck is a lot smarter. He's got sort of that tanctonip ability, so it helps him like excel at reading. And the other student, I guess, gets quite upset and jealous about it. So he like storms off out of book club. So now book club is just the teacher and Buck, I guess. But
yeah, that was weird. But it felt like at the time it was more of like a budget. They're like, yeah, there's one other kid.
That's what
and
I felt
was
like
that's
too.
weird.
Yeah. And the next day, the principal or the English teacher returns to school and gets called to the principal's office. And the English teacher is told that someone reported the teacher as being intimate in public with Buck, and that if she does not transfer out of the school, he will charge her with child molestation.
Yeah. So here was the first weird thing, because obviously we have not seen this. Nothing has been shown. It's very innocent. It's a teacher taking a student under her wing. He does seem like he's advancing very quickly. You know, I'm sure at least partially due to her help. And this teacher, this principal or whatever he is portrayed as like very slimy and like bureaucratic, and he's getting rid of her in this very underhanded way. And you're supposed to be like, oh, I can't believe she's getting screwed. Like Buck is finally getting the teacher he wants, and she's getting like destroyed by the system, and he's going to lose this person. And she's like, you know, what am I going to do? Like he sort of puts her in a tough position. It's an unwinnable situation.
Well, she even says, she's like, oh, I think I know what this is. Obviously, my student stormed off yesterday, and he's obviously angry, and he made this like false report. Yeah. And now I'm getting in trouble for it. And so we cut to the next book club. They're out in public again. Buck is waiting on a bench for her, and she shows up, and she tells Buck, hey, I'm being transferred. This is what happened. Someone accused me of molesting you. And he's just like, Buck's just like, well, that's wrong. We need to fight it. We need to like show people that this didn't happen. We need to make sure people understand what actually happened here. Like, it's unfair to your reputation this is happening. And she's like, no, Buck, I'm taking the transfer because I do want to molest you. And then she proceeds to molest him.
Yeah. I'll take it for a couple things. One, horrific. It's a horrific. And the only other thing I could think of this was like that awful storyline of Dawson's Creek, the first season of there, where they had the like, isn't that cool? He's making out with the teacher. It's like, no, it's not cool. But the horrific nature of that aside, of this teacher taking advantage of her student. Okay, let's just put that. We all agree it's horrible. In terms of the story of this, there was never an indication that's what it was, nor does it add anything other than, I guess, a plot line for Buck maybe later in the future, but I'm not even sure to what extent, because she's leaving. And it was just like it doesn't make, like, you think when she got caught, she'd be like, you're right, like, I do have a problem and blah, 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 and I've done this in other schools or something. Like, as gross as that plot line is, at least it makes sense. It didn't make any sense for her to do this.
Yeah, that's a different plot line. Obviously, it's set up truly as a mentor-mentee relationship until the very end, where she's just like, FYI, I do have feelings for you, and I do want to, like, make out with you, and let's make out now. And even coming from this period of time, there's a variation on this where they soften it, where it's just like, you know, it's just like, it's an innocent romance that blooms between the May-December. Like, you know, it's not unusual, like, as you said, the Dawson's Creek one. It's not unusual from this time period for them to, like, gloss over what is a huge power dynamic problem. But this episode very explicitly is like, we're accusing you of molesting a child. Like, they say it out loud. They're like, they say the words, you molested Buck. And she says, no, I didn't. And then they get together and she says, Buck, I've been accused of things that I haven't done with you. And Buck's like, well, that's not fair. That's terrible for your reputation as a teacher. Like, that can haunt you forever. We should fight it. And then suddenly she's just like, but I want to. And I was like, you've set it up as a bad thing. A bad thing. It's not like, it's not like you soft pedaled into like a romance. You're just like, you set it up like she's being accused of molestation.
Yeah. That's a very good point. She didn't come in and say, Buck, this is hard for me to say, but they're trying to keep us apart, and the worst part about that is, like, I love you or whatever. Now, again, the morality of that aside, that at least makes sense. But the way she even did it, it was like it was supposed to be like dropping on the audience, but it's like it drops because it's dumb and doesn't work. like at all. It just was. It's like, was it done for shock value? But like, to what effect? It was shocking in the how bad it was, not in how edgy or cool it was.
No, I think what was supposed to happen is you get to that moment, and then she's like, I really do want to do that with you, though, Buck. And they start making out. And I think you're supposed to be like, yeah, get some, Buck.
Do you think so?
I think that's what they were hoping the audience would be like. Good for him.
I don't know. You might be right. I don't know if I agree. You could very well be right. I think it's just bad writing. I don't think they thought about the implications at all. I just thought they thought, hey, we'll just do a real turn. We'll set up as one thing, and we'll do that. That's a red herring that she's not a molester. I just think it was badly ill-conceived. That's what I think.
I only think that because it's not like she kisses him and then Buck like pulls away like, oh, we just had a conversation about how this is bad for your reputation and how I wanted to help you with that, and now you're doing it. No, as soon as she starts kissing him, Buck's just like gets into it. He gets really into it.
Yeah. You do make a point. You make a very good point there. And so now, as we're going to know, this is pretty much all we're going to see of this.
Yeah, it's over.
We're not going to see any resolution. So let's just quickly, where do you think they thought this was going for if there was a second season?
I cannot tell you what the next season was. I guess just like Buck has a relationship now with an older woman, and that's going to cause problems at home when he brings home his girlfriend. I don't know where that was headed.
Like, because I thought, well, maybe it's that she ends up going anyways, but he's still pining for her, so it makes having a relationship difficult with people, and he can't explain to his parents that the reason he can't have a normal relationship is because he still is pining for this teacher. I was like, is that what they're going for? It was like a lot of work for nothing.
Yeah, it was so much set up for what was like basically felt like a little bit of a subplot about teaching and like working with students and like the difficulties of like the school system that ended up being really weird. And I don't know what the intention or what they were going to go, where to go from there. I have no idea.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say is like it's not that you want to see the same thing all the time, but you want the scene B after scene A to make sense, like as something that one thing leads to another. And if it was that Buck now, he finally felt accepted, he was excelling in a way, he found someone who like recognized him as a person and accepted him and appreciated what he was able to do with his mind and the way he thought, and this person was ripped from him, which then puts him back into like, a gang or something. I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. He's lost the one person that meant something to him, or it affects him in a different way that you don't see. All makes sense. But the whole making it with the teacher was just like, bleh.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, probably if it were a different show, you get a lot of drama out of the pure trauma. The only person who's ever believed in him just wanted to molest him. Like, what a terrible thing to happen to you.
Yeah. Also, I should say, the C plot, which it has no effect on anything else, just this weird C plot that they throw in.
Four scenes.
It's bizarre.
Anyway, that's wrapped up. Let's go to the A plot. Let's actually talk about what this episode's about.
Yeah, what a nuts episode.
We're 25 minutes in, haven't even begun talking about the episode.
Yeah. Well, but there's 3 plot lines. These are the 2 that like they keep going to, and you're like, why? It's not like they intertwine at the end and you learn that what Buck has learned about himself and somehow helps teaching Matt a lesson about tolerance, and that actually helps George with his being kinder when he's promoted and solving the case. It's like, no, it's just weird things happening.
Yeah, well, what happens in this episode is it starts with a Tanctonese judge dropping dead in his chambers. I was impressed. Pretty good to rise all the way to judge in 5 years. That's a lot of work.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Right away, you see him like breathe this thing in. You don't know what it is yet, and then he dies. So you as a viewer are like, oh, that thing he just breathed in kills him. And then we have to wait like 40 minutes for the characters to catch up. I always think that's such a weird strategy of like, yeah, you viewer, you know what happened, but don't worry, George and Matt will get there.
I mean, that's just the TV of the time.
Yeah, it makes it so anticlimactic.
But this judge, he was notorious, or maybe not always notorious, but like well known for supporting the civil rights of the Tanctonese, and he made a lot of enemies as a result. So George and Sykes are put on the case to sort of figure out what's happened to him and if anyone has attempted to kill him in some unusual way.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, Matt is taking the Detective 2 test? Is that what they call it?
George is.
George's, excuse me. And he's a Detective 2 test, and he feels really bad because he doesn't think he did well and he was nervous. And Matt's sort of like, don't worry, but I've taken it lots of times and I failed every time. You'll fail too. Of course, he doesn't fail, and it creates this weird tension between the two because Matt is clearly jealous that he now has a lower ranking than George. And do you think George was sort of rubbing it in Matt's face? Because I didn't really feel like it, but it feels like by the end of the episode, he's sort of like, yeah, I was doing that too. Did you feel he was rubbing it in Matt's face?
I think at the start he was not, but I think over the course of the episode, because Matt is such a pissy little baby about it, I think he does start doing it a little bit because Matt's at no point not annoying about it. And they sort of try to show it because at the start of the episode, they go to the scene. He hasn't got his promotion yet. And Matt's ordering George around. He's like, go do this, go do that. Mm-hmm. And a Tanctonese officer's like, why do you let him order you around? He's like, I don't know, we're just partners. And then when George gets the promotion, he like asks one favor of Sykes, and Sykes is immediately off put by the idea he might have to take a report somewhere. Yeah, it's hard to say. Like, I think by the end, it's quite clear that both of them are kind of like poking at each other. But I think you're right. At the start, I don't think George is doing it on purpose. I think Matt's just overly sensitive.
Right.
But that sort of runs throughout the plot of this. It's not a major thing, but it's the simmering tension between them is the idea. And they have a bunch of suspects in the murder, a bunch of people who had reason to kill the judge. There's like a slumlord who takes advantage of Tanctonese. There's a mentally ill guy who stabbed a Tanctonese person. There's a human purist who, we've seen before, and he tried to get the judge disbarred, or she did anyway.
Oh, and I just wanted to say real quick, the creating a tension between these two, I don't think it's a bad thing, because I think it's where this show excels is like, I'm a little country, you're a little rock and roll. You're an alien, I'm a human. I do things by the book. You're more loosey-goosey. We've seen it a million times, but it's because it works, and I think it works on this show when they do it well. So I never have a problem when they create an inherent tension. Like we watched the episode where they were stuck in a safe house together, and I think they missed that turn because it's like their inherent personalities that we know as characters should create the conflict because they live their lives and see things so differently. And they sort of played on this, but again, yeah, it comes off more like Matt's just pissy as opposed to they have two different ways of looking at things. But I like the inherent idea of them having conflict while they're doing things, because it really should be that despite sometimes them arguing and not getting along, they are actually a good team. And despite themselves, their flaws and strengths complement each other, so they're a better team in solving the case. I think that works well, and they sort of do it a little bit this episode, but then they had to have Buck make it out with teachers. They don't have too much time.
Yeah, it's a clumsily executed idea for sure, this episode. And I think part of it, too, is supposed to lead into the next. They're trying to leave it like a question of can they remain partners if one of them has a power imbalance now. It doesn't really work because you're right. Matt mostly comes off as a baby, and then George also starts behaving badly, and you're like, well, whose side am I on?
Yeah, you're both jerks.
Anyway, the crime continues because a prominent Tanctonese doctor dies under also similar circumstances, and the similarities is the crime scenes both have the same Tanctonese object there. They're called kiff balls.
And George refers to them as sort of, or describes them, as sort of like catnip to the aliens. They love the smell of it. It gives them some sort of high or something like that, right?
Still an endorphin rush. I believe at some point they called them tanctonip.
Yeah. Yeah. So you get the sense, you're like, oh, this is a normal thing. And actually, I'm like, sure, why not? There's a thing that they all love the smell of, and humans don't get it, but they do. I'm like, great. Fine world building.
Yeah. And they send the stuff off to their medical examiner or whatever, and they are able to put together that someone has put some sort of genetically engineered bacterium into the smell balls, and when Tanctonese smell it, they die, essentially. It doesn't last for very long. Like, I think the bacterium dies off quickly, but if you smell it, you're Tanctonese, you die. That's the premise. Yeah. And soon after they discover that, a letter arrives taking credit for the murders, threatening more prominent Tanctonese with death. And they're very quickly able to match the printer paper to the mentally ill suspect they had in the station earlier, who had previously made threats with the same printer paper.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you were doing this sort of thing, would you send a letter? I guess if you want the press, I guess.
Well, that's just it. Because what they do is they go to track him down. They're like, hey, we had you in earlier. They find him. He steals a bicycle and tries to bicycle away from them. So like any good cop, they just hit him with a car.
That's right. Yeah, George just hits him with a car, and it's like the whole scene is that they're fighting over who's going to drive, and George is like, "Watch this," and hits the guy. I'm like, maybe Matt should have driven.
I do like, as you've noted many times in this show, they do a lot of ADR work in this for some reason. And
yes,
they hit the guy with a car, and then after they hit him, there's ADR where Sykes goes, "You killed him," and George goes, "No, he's fine." I'm like, what?
Yeah. There was a couple scenes of this where they did that, where they're like walking away for something, and they're like, "Hey, there's that person we're looking for. You don't need that scene now." You're like, "Oh, okay, nice job, ADR."
Anyway, after they catch him, they discover that he's just taking credit for them. He has no real connection to it. He has no ability to do what's being done. He just did it because he wanted the press. As you said, it's just like he wrote the letter because he wanted the press, essentially.
Yeah, they're back to square one, and there's tanctonip people dying from these balls. They got it, like it's a clock. They got to get there.
And Jordan, this I think maybe is more to your complaint that they maybe telegraph things too quickly, or in ways that the cops should put together. Is earlier in the episode when they were looking at the possible suspects, they had the list of them. There's the purist, there's the mentally ill guy, there's the slumlord, and there was also another guy. There's this chemist they went to visit on his boat. He tried to sue his former pesticide company for stealing a chemical he created, and he lost. The Tanctonese judge ruled against him, and now he hates Tanctonese people. They go to see him. He's like, I didn't do anything. Leave me alone. I'm going to paint on my boat. I hate Tanctonese people. And now this has been like 30 minutes, and like they figured out there's a bacterium, there's all stuff, and I'm just like, go back to the chemist, you guys. The pieces all point to the chemist. And they finally are just like, maybe we should go talk to that guy who deals with pesticides and killing people with poison.
Yeah, who has pesticide company, who deals with, he's not only can deal with that stuff, but he seems to actively hate the aliens to the point where he can't even have a 2-second conversation where he's like not like spitting in George's face. I'm like, he seems like he might be a little bit guilty of something.
So they head back to the dock they met him at earlier, and this is again where the tension between George and Matt Sykes boils over. It sort of works, it sort of doesn't. It's essentially Matt is being actually a good person at this point. He's like, it's dangerous for you to go out in the salt water. We know that kills Tanctonese people. Let me go out in the boat. Let me go arrest this guy. I don't want you to jeopardize yourself, George. And George is just like, well, you've been a baby to me about being the leader this whole time, and I'm now your boss, so I want to do the arrest. It's my arrest to make. And they start arguing about who's going to arrest the guy. They actually get in a physical wrestling match.
Again, I played like it's a joke, but it's like, you're like, you guys are two adults for one, and two police officers secondly, and you guys are like physically wrestling each other on the ground because you want to be able to solve a case, and in the meantime you're putting people's lives at jeopardy. I'm like, is it that funny? I guess.
Well, and that's the thing, is they're wrestling on the ground because they've seen that the suspect is getting away in his boat, and they need to commandeer a boat to go after him. And so instead of like putting their differences aside, or like, they wrestle on the ground as the suspect gets further away, and the wrestling only stops when the suspect's boat explodes, killing him.
Yeah, and no, I think we're supposed to believe like, oh, I'm so glad they were fighting because it actually kept them off the boat and they would have died otherwise. But it's a weird beat to hit. I'm like, so it was good? It was good they did all this?
Oh, weird. Maybe they did mean that. I didn't take it that way, but maybe you're right. Maybe that was the intention.
That's what I thought. I thought it was supposed to be like, it's so good they did this because they would have died otherwise. But it's like, by acting like children? Sure.
So once again, they're left with no suspects. It's nearly the end of the episode. And we go back to George's house where, we see a puppet, a freaky-looking baby Tanctonese puppet. And this is where I'm shocked. I'm like, they had another baby, and B, they've built this awful puppet.
Yeah, it doesn't look great. And it's just one of those things where, like, you haven't watched the show in a while. You're like, oh, they've added another character, which I love the idea, though, that, look, we've missed some episodes, so where there's been some really good ones with the family, but they don't have anything for Susan to do. They barely have had anything to do with Buck. I mean, a little bit more. He's had some plot lines, and he's also getting molested in this episode. And the daughter has nothing to do. And they're like, you know what we should do? Let's add a baby character. But what it was is, like you said, they were like a hilarious idea, pre-Junior of a guy having a baby. It's like, we got to do this episode. They're like, well, we can't have to lose the baby, so he'll just have a baby and we'll have an extra character.
I guess so. I can't believe we missed the episode where he was pregnant. That would have been real something to see.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Maybe a bonus episode.
But yeah, we see this freaky baby. We see what's happening to the family. They're kind of just hanging out. They're playing Scrabble. This is where the daughter says her dad's being doppelganger because he's like not paying attention to the game.
Yeah.
And the doorbell rings. And now this whole episode has been... Someone's been killing prominent tanctonese. They were worried that George would be in trouble because he just made Detective 2, so they'd put police on his house at some point. I guess they pulled them when they realized the threat was a fake letter. But they ring the doorbell. It's a flower delivery. Susan and the daughter go up, and they're like, oh, flowers, that's so nice. And they start smelling the flowers, and they open up the card, and the card says it's from an admirer, which was the same thing written on one of the cards in the murder scenes. And as soon as they say... the card is from an admirer, it suddenly goes slow motion, and George screams, no, and he dives across the room and slaps the flowers out of his wife's hand. All of it in slow motion. The flowers sail through the air and break on the ground, and it was it's the funniest thing I've seen in a long time.
I know. It was weird because they by adding the slow motion, and they were trying to add this sort of like gravity to the scene, but it just didn't. It did the opposite. It was startling and funny, and you're like, oh, okay.
It's comical. It was comical.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, because the idea here is that like now I guess the entire family has been poisoned by the bacterium. They're all going to die. And they cut to like the last bit. There's like a shadowy room in a warehouse. And the purest woman we saw at the start, who's one of the suspects, walks in, and she's just like, did we get the bacterium from the chemist? And they're like, yeah, but he wanted $1 million for it, so he blew him up. Oh, well, let's spray this over top of all LA and kill all of the tanctonese. And I was like, okay, I mean, that's a villain plot for sure, but I don't understand why they sent the flowers to George's house.
Yeah, I guess we're supposed to think he's a prominent enough citizen in the society and tanctonese that she'd have sent it to him, but I'm like, but is he?
But here's the thing, that letter was fake. That letter was not true because that was the mentally ill person threatening prominent people. And all the people who died so far, the one guy who died was the judge, and the chemist killed him because he was mad at the judge. And the doctor died because the doctor worked for the chemistry or the insecticide company that the chemist worked for. So both of those were like motivated killings by the chemist.
Well, maybe she doesn't know that he's not a very good detective, and she thought he was going to solve the case, so she had to
get it out ahead of it.
Yeah. You're right, though. If your plan is just to kill everyone in one fell swoop, you don't need to do it. You don't need to add that extra little one.
It doesn't connect because like they set up all the stakes, and then they revealed the truth of it all, and none of it would have anyone send George flowers that are poisoned.
It doesn't matter. The family's in jeopardy now. It's a cliffhanger.
It's a cliffhanger. Jordan, do you think that's it? Do you think the reason they introduced this teacher subplot is because his whole family's about to die and the teacher's going to have to adopt him?
Oh, my goodness.
As her love son?
That's awful. That's
season 2.
It's terrible. That's terrible. It's Bucka the teacher the season. You're like, this is really uncomfortable. A whole season of this?
This is the show now?
But the baby's still there.
Yeah, the baby's fine. It doesn't die.
Yeah, it does die. It's still a baby.
But yes, this is the cliffhanger it leaves on. George's whole family's in jeopardy. Sykes is racing to the hospital to help them. Their partnership will be saved, obviously, after this trauma. And it's a cliffhanger for sure, but it's pretty clumsily executed.
Yeah, you made a good point. It's definitely a villain plot. They wanted to set up a high stakes, larger than life kind of villain, comic book esque sort of end of the world scenario, but it felt shoehorned in, and it's like we could have just had this be the episode. Like we didn't really need the other subplots to this. They didn't help, and they weren't very good. And it just, like, I'll say this: if the Kathy was just its own episode, I'd have been fine with it because I think they could have gotten into it with a little bit more nuance. But yeah, then they end the show, and you're like, oh, it's just now a really bad episode, guys. Like, really bad.
Yeah, it's an odd one for sure. I see what they're going for, what they're setting up in the second one, like the romance. Won't they next year? Will these people survive? I don't know what's happening with Buck though at all, but it's clumsily executed, and Even like the telltale sign is when he dives across the room in what's supposed to be the most dramatic scene of the episode, and it is comical.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think in the TV movies they answered this was the plot?
I can tell you this for sure. They did have the plot, the pilot, or not the pilot, the episode, season 2, episode 1 was written. It did exist. And that was turned into a comic book after the show was canceled. It was then also turned into a full novel after the show was canceled. And then eventually would become, 3 or 4 years later, the next movie, the movie that continues the story. So this plot line does get resolved in the following movie of the show. Who knows? I'm sure it changed quite a bit over the intervening years, but there are 3 versions of how this concludes. I think they're all probably pretty much similar, but they adapted it comic book, and to finally the TV movie.
Each one is that to save the day and to solve this huge disaster that's going to happen, Buck must consummate his relationship with the teacher.
I mean, I am most interested in seeing, because here's the thing: if 4 years go past between the finale and when you make the TV movie,
yeah, I
definitely cut out the Buck subplot. I probably cut out a bit of the Kathy subplot, or I just wrap that up really quick. They fall in love or something in that TV movie, because you don't have time. It's just a movie, right? So you have to have a quick arc for everybody. So I'm really curious if that would be in the TV movie. My guess is no, but I bet you it's in the comic book, and I bet you it's in the book.
Yeah, you're probably right. It's probably in at least one of those. One of the forms that it took. You're probably right.
I'm very curious to see how they wrap that one up. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Jordan, I assume we're no final notes on this episode. I think we've covered everything.
I mean, that's it. It's. I'll say this for it. It's an episode that took turns I didn't expect coming, and it's still a mess.
Yeah,
it's a mess of an episode.
Well, what do you want to give it then? What do you want to rate Green Eyes?
I'm always so weirdly conflicted on this show because I don't dislike the show. Like when you break down the elements, you're like, oh, it's so bad. But it's not like it was a terrible watch or anything. It's just not a very good episode TV. Like I don't think you can hate it. It's not, but it's not good. I'm going to give it a 4. And I can't even tell if I'm being generous or not. It's not a good episode of TV.
Yeah, I think here's the thing: is the execution is a mess. The concepts are fine; they all make sense on paper. Here's all the cliffhangers we're setting up. Here's how it's all going to end. Here's why it's a cliffhanger. Here's the relationships at the end of it. They're all just done sloppily, so it mostly plays comically or not well at all. But I will say, jumping ahead 15 episodes. It was at least shocking and fun when there was a hard cut to this Tanctonip's baby puppet. Suddenly, I had no idea I had no idea. They don't know I'm watching it this way, so they haven't hinted at it at all. There's just a hard cut to this weird puppet wiggling around. It's So there's fun stuff like that. I think I'm gonna go 6. It's not great.
Wow.
I think it's closer to a 4 or 5 probably, but I think for my personal watching this particular time, because we jumped so far ahead, at least I was just shocked by everything I was in.
Yeah, I was more bummed out. I thought they could kind of I thought they could pull it out at the end. It's the bottom of the 9th. Come on, here you go, guys. And they're nah, strikeout.
I mean, I will say this: at least I got that hilarious sequence of a man knocking flowers out of the air in slow motion. It's really funny. It's really funny.
So his whole family died, right? And this is sort of like the Lonesome Dove, the outlaw years, where he's just all depressed and he's going around.
Oh, I hope so.
Because his wife died.
This is where he grows his beard.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh dear. Well, Jordan, should I go to the continued right computer and we'll just see our final series average for this as it stands?
Yeah. Well, it's not going to be above a 5.
I don't think it's going to change much.
Yeah, and it's kind of a bummer because I don't know if that gives you an accurate picture of the show, because I think in its greatest aspirations it's a much better show, but you made a good point. It's just clumsy, and I don't exactly know why, if it's just the constraints of TV at the time, or just the writers just don't have the chops they need, or if it's multiple factors. I don't know, and I can't fault any of the on-screen talent, and I can't fault the actual idea. It's just it reminds you a bit of the first couple seasons of Star Trek Next Generation, not seasons, it's not seasons 3 through 7. It's seasons 1 to 2, where you're just Gene, you got these ideas, but man, they're badly executed. I
mean, I think in the favor of that argument, the pilot was pretty good, actually, as far as these pilots go.
I agree.
I think it was.
I agree.
It still had some clumsiness to it, but I think overall had better footing. And I think they've just it's not there in the actual episodes of the show. It tends to be.
Well, you could feel them really wearing their heart on the sleeve, and I think there was something endearing in the pilot where you're like, yeah, you guys are missing the mark a little bit, but you're really going for it, and I get it. And it's just like you're almost there. You're almost there. And then it just felt like they got actually further away from it. And it's weird to say, like, almost trying to deal with larger issues, even slightly clumsily, would have been more interesting, I think, than some of the episodes we saw.
Just boring police procedurals, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, that's not that interesting. It's more interesting to know what makes humans tick and seeing our foibles in different ways and being reflected by these non-humans. I think there's something interesting there that, for whatever reason, they seem not to want to get into.
All right, Jordan. Well, here is the final series average for Alien Nation. Overall, we have decided it is a 4.78.
Yeah. I probably would say, if someone said, like, what's the show? But I'd be like, it's like a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm happy with a 4.7. I think that is ultimately correct.
Yeah. I mean, that last episode was bad.
So funny, though.
Yeah. And that's Alien Nation. I mean, we did it. It took us 6 years to get to it, but we got to it.
It was worth the wait.
Well, I don't know. You know, like, I had like a allergic reaction to it. I am glad I watched it. It's an interesting time capsule of this time period of TV, for better or worse, you know?
Yeah. Honestly, I think on paper, obviously a better idea than it ended up being executed. But Steven still, like, I think, like, an original idea. It felt original.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree. Yeah, it just, yeah, and it's that they fell back into more boring TV tropes where they could have been a little more interesting. You know what? And who knows? Maybe the TV movies are great. Maybe that format was better for them to have like a singular idea in like an hour and a half. You know?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Well, Jordan, that's the end of Alien Nation for us. So if any of the listeners out there want to email us, the email here is continuumdrag@gmail.com. You, of course, can always make us watch more on a bonus episode, Pregnant George.
That'd be the one.
And on Instagram, X, and Facebook, we'll have clips from these episodes. So you'll get to see Tanctonip's baby, flowers being flung across a room in slow motion while someone screams no.
I say the teacher kissing Buck, probably.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I want to go back to that.
No, I think you have to. That's what you got to give the people what they
want.
want.
That's what the people want? We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what I give them.
Yeah, fair enough.
But that wraps it up, listener. So thank you for joining us. Jordan, I'll see you on something new next time.
See you then.
Can't get enough Continuum Drag? Commission a bonus episode for charity.
Want us to watch an episode we missed after using the escape pod or during a best of run? No problem.
Is there an episode of a series we've never watched or a TV movie you want us to cover? You got it.
Wish we'd comment on your favorite movie, content, or other weird media? Sure, why not?
All you have to do is make a donation to one of the charities selected by past guests on our website.
We suggest a donation of $50 per television hour of content we're watching, but everyone's means are different, so give what you can.
Get all the details about bonus episodes for charity on our website, continuumdrag.podbean.com, or follow the links in our social media profiles.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Ontario, Canada, and Seoul, South Korea. Theme music by James Rick Seidler. Produced by Jordan Dullock and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Hughes.